Good evening, everyone. Just give it a couple of minutes before we start. So thanks for your time this evening, but we'll just have another minute or so just in case people are having IT issues. Log on. Okay, I'll make a start then. That gives it a couple of minutes past 5, so that's a bit of time for people to log on. And obviously this is being recorded as well, so I hope people can catch up. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and thank you for joining us. And what is, I think, our second webinar at Chilton Woods. My name's Sam Caslin. I'm the planning manager at Taylor Wimpey. And we've got joined by our project team this evening who will help run you through and talk you through our proposals for what's going to be the second phase. This meeting is being recorded, so it will be uploaded onto our website probably at some point tomorrow. So everyone who can't attend can watch this again. You'll notice that you are you've been added to the meeting, but you're automatically muted and your camera's off. This is to ensure a bit of a smooth running of the presentation and reduce the bandwidth usage. But this isn't an act of censorship on our behalf. If you've got questions, we're more than happy to hear them. But if you could just type them into the meeting chat, and we'll take them in a question and answer session at the end. So Alex Moore will lead that part of the presentation. So how this will run? Sorry, this is. Start with a bit of an introduction and a bit of background about Taylor Wimpey, and then we'll hand over to Ruth Stainsby who'll run you through a bit more detail of the development proposals and how we've got to this stage, and then talk about the next steps really and what we'll do in terms of how you can get detailed comments to us if you've got them on the proposal, and what our timeline is for actually getting it towards a planning application and starting on site as well. So yes, as I mentioned, I'm Sam Caslin. I'm the planning manager at Taylor Wimpey. I'm joined by Ben Rayner, who's a senior engineer at Taylor Wimpey, and we've also got Ruth Stainsby from Gardner Stewart Architects and Tora Bickford Sawkins as well. And also joined by Greg Collins, who's landscape and ecology director working for that CSA Environmental. And we've also got Mark Craddock on the call, who's a partner at Simpsons, who are our engineering consultants. And we've also got Robert Allen, who's a senior planner at Savills, and also Alex Moore, who's our senior account manager at RKH, who does all our sort of PR and engagement and setups of these events as well. So as I mentioned, we'll start by talking a bit about the background and an introduction to Taylor Wimpey. The session is going to be recorded. I think the cameras are obviously automatically turned off, but just so you're aware, if you have any questions as you go, just type them into the message area of the Teams, and Alex will read them all out at the end, and we'll just take them in turn as we receive them. And as I mentioned, the webinar will be uploaded to the consultation webpage at some point tomorrow as well. So for people, I think a lot of people know about Taylor Wimpey, but Taylor Wimpey as a business was actually formed by the merger of George Wimpey and Taylor Woodrow in 2007. One of the largest volume house builders in the country, and to have a long heritage and rich history which dates back more than 100 years. one of the largest house builders in the UK. We've got 23 regional businesses across the UK, and there is still a regional office in Spain as well, I believe. We're proud of our commitment to building quality homes and providing excellent customer service and strive to create thriving communities, which is what we want to do here in Sudbury. As a business across the country, we've delivered over 9,600 new homes across the country in 2020, and just shy of 2,000 affordable homes as well. As a business, we do regularly donate time and money to local causes, and passionate about investing in the areas we build. And you see some of the stats here in 2020, some of the financial contributions in excess of £287 million via planning obligations. And you can see some of the figures there. So £6 million towards public transport, £36 million towards schools, £5 million towards public open space, and £13 million towards improving local roads and infrastructure. Talked about our reputation and our customer service. So we do have a 5-star rating for customer satisfaction from the Home Builders Federation. We are a 5-star builder. 72 of our site managers won an NHBC Pride in the Job Award in 2021. We have more awards-winning site managers per development than any other major national home builder. So that gives you, I suppose, a bit of a flavour for how well we run our sites as well, and looking for sort of considerate constructor schemes as well. We have over 3,000 excellent reviews from our customers on Trustpilot, and in 2020 we had the highest NHBC construction quality review score in the large builder category. We do have a commitment to building a better world, and it's something that we are improving on year as well. So we're committed to building greener, healthier homes for all our residents, from energy efficient fixtures and fittings to cutting our carbon emissions and enhancing existing green spaces. We build sustainability into everything we do, and that includes interrogation of our supply chain as well. In 2021, we launched a new environment strategy and committed to further reducing our carbon footprint, increasing natural habitats on our development, and using more sustainable resources. So this webinar this evening is to cover what will be our second residential application at Chilton Woods. It's part of a much larger strategic application, so a piece of the puzzle, if you like. Outline planning permission was granted for the entire site in 2018, and Taylor Wimpey has just acquired a part of the site, so we'll cover that bit in the next slide. As mentioned, the consultation just covers the second reserve matters planning application, which is a residential parcel and will be it's currently 242 homes, and 30% will be affordable. So touched on the planning history, and this was the wider master plan that you can see here from the outline application. The site in its entirety includes 1,150 new homes, 15 hectares of employment land, new hotel, recycling centre, district heating network, energy centre, a village centre with up to 1,000 metres of retail, community hall, workspaces, residential dwellings, a primary school and preschool with car parking, community woodland areas, open spaces, sustainable drainage, sports pavilion and playing fields, and the new allotments. And you can see from this application, it's just shy of 50% of the site will be delivered through open space or community woodland. So as I mentioned, Taylor Wimpey haven't acquired the whole of the site. They've just acquired part of it, the bit that was made available to sale for us, and you can see that carved out from the outline master plan. It's just the bits inside the red line is what we've acquired. So it includes all the residential elements, the village centre, the sports pitches and pavilion, the allotments, and a portion of the community woodland and green spaces, including the play areas. So there's elements of the community woodland that Taylor Wimpey won't be responsible for providing. We won't be providing the employment land to the west. The primary school, we just provide the land, hand back a service parcel of land for that, and the county wildlife to the east here as well. So in terms of the development we're talking about this evening, we've already got a few planning applications approved on the site. So the main infrastructure and the first phase residential was approved last year. And so there's work doing for that is currently being under construction at the moment. And the second phase for the residential development is the bit outlined in pink here. So I'm not sure, that's not quite loaded up. Well, that's quite strange. We do have a parameter plan, the building heights parameter plan, so we can upload this onto the website and share that separately, because it's not quite uploaded separately. But it's the parameter plan sets maximum height and building heights across the area. The maximum building heights for this phase are set at 10.8 metres for the majority of the parcel, although there is a sliver just to the northern part of the phase that includes encourages slightly larger buildings, so up to 12 metres along the frontage of the village green. Variation in building heights will create interesting roofline, and taller buildings will be used to mark focal points and key corners throughout the scheme. I think this is the bit where I hand over to Ruth. So yeah, I'll just pass over to Ruth Stainsby from GSA Architects.
Thank you, Sam, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, just a few more slides on background. So a design code was a requirement of the outline planning and is now an approved document. The purpose of the code is to set out a series of rules for the design of Chilton Woods using diagrams and text. And it's really a stepping stone document, if you like, between the outline planning stage and the reserved matters, or the more detailed planning stages. And there's just a few sample pages here. Next slide. The code provides guidance for designers on a number of issues, which we've listed here. I won't read them all out. But phase 2 is required to comply with the parameters and key items set out in the code, as well as local planning policy and the outline parameter plans. So a design code compliance checklist will be submitted with the phase 2 application. There's also a strong overarching vision for Chilton Woods, which you can see here, which was again established at the outline stage, and we're all very much committed to this. And again, some of the key principles are summarised here. But just to summarise, we really want to create a characterful new community with a real sense of place. And our vision is for a healthy environment to live and work in, set within an extensive network of community woodland and green spaces, including valued landscapes and habitats. And this application will include numerous aspects that align with that vision. So before we do anything, we always undertake a thorough analysis of the site and its context. And a huge amount of research and site analysis was undertaken at the outline stage and whilst developing the code and the designs for phase 1. So in order to inform the design, a separate study, here's the front cover, covers local character. And this document includes detailed analysis of the surrounding area, including the parishes of Chilton, Sudbury, Acton and Long Melford. So the following slides explain in a bit more detail the rationale and thinking behind the design of the second phase. So the first thing we do as a team is identify any specific constraints and issues that need to be considered. So, for example, you can see on this diagram, there's a foul sewer that needs to be accommodated within the layout. That's shown in purple. There's a public right-of-way to the west that will be retained within a landscape setting along the western edge of phase 2. There are existing trees and hedgerows to be retained along Acton Lane and the site's southern edge. The main spine road will be a new bus route, and this has already been approved under the major infrastructure work submission. But we do need to minimise junctions onto this road, and that affects our response to road hierarchy and parking, for example. And the brown zone that you can see, that's the development parcel. At this stage, we also identify opportunities. There's opportunities for new cycle links through to the new school and village centre, and for new play and trim trail stations along the public right-of-way. There's also opportunity for a strong frontage to the north overlooking the new village green next to the new village centre, where there will be shops and other amenities, including a community hall. Next slide, Sam. So pulling all that together, this slide shows the proposals for the first phase. You could probably just go back one, actually, Sam.
Yes. Sorry, Ruth, it's for some reason my PowerPoint's frozen. There we go.
That's better. It's just a bit larger, isn't it, on this slide? So to the west, we've got the large, high-quality landscape swathe incorporating the prow and the trim trail play stations, sustainable drainage basins and areas of meadow grasses. Detached houses overlook this space with cars tucked at the side to maintain a car-free edge. From here, there's a tree-lined route through to the new school, incorporating a cycle path which links up to the new village centre. Here at the village centre, there's a village green separating the new homes from the market square and the facilities within the village centre. To the south of phase 2, new homes are set back significantly from the existing housing behind the retained trees. And coming round to the Acton Lane interface, where existing trees and hedgerows will be retained and enhanced with new planting. If you imagine walking up Acton Lane at the moment from the south, currently houses back onto the lane with close bordered fencing and little overlooking. The new homes will front onto this space, ensuring good surveillance and an attractive frontage, set well back from Acton Lane, creating a semi-rural character. And when you reach the junction with Reynolds Way, this is where the main access will be into phase 2 from the new Spine Road. As you approach the site on foot along the public footpath from the southwest, you'll see a sweep of detached houses through the landscape with cars tucked neatly away out of sight. We're also carefully placing key buildings at gateways and terminating important views through the development. The taller elements, for example, which will be up to 3 stories, are shown in grey here and are placed on the main Spine Road and the bus route. I think you can probably go to the next slide now, Sam. And as Sam said, there will be 240 new homes, 30% of which will be affordable. There's a wide variety of building typologies, which is all in accordance with the code. So detached, semis, rows of terrace cottages, apartments in small blocks or coach houses, all arranged in streets, courtyards and leafy lanes. This phase also includes the village green. And again, this key frontage is car-free. So the village green isn't cluttered with cars, but cars are parked in a courtyard tucked away at the back. Next slide. So this plan shows the different types of homes, from 1 and 2 bedroom flats within the apartment blocks shown grey here, through to 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses. So there'll be a wide variety of new homes in order to create a diverse community. Next slide. 30% of the homes in phase 2 will be affordable, and they'll be pepper potted across the phase in small clusters, which is shown here in blue and grey. They'll also be tenure blind. So what that means is affordable homes are indistinguishable from market for sale homes. And affordable homes will be either for rent or shared ownership. There are a wide variety of affordable homes, from the 1 and 2 bedroom flats, which includes 3 wheelchair flats and 2 and 3 bedroom homes. Taylor Wimpey are also delivering more affordable homes early on, as the overall requirement is actually for 25% across the whole site. In terms of building heights, phase 2 obviously complies with the outline parameter plan and the draft design code. So as Sam said, the maximum height is 12 metres, but we've just got 2 buildings at the top there fronting onto the village green that are about 12 metres tall. And that's equivalent to a 3-storey apartment block with a pitched roof as well. Elsewhere, the maximum height is 10.8, although in actual fact, most of the new homes are 2-storey. And taller buildings are generally located along the main bus route, and the 2.5-storey elements are used within the townscape to terminate key views and add a bit of variety and visual interest. The 2.5-storey, it really is a 3-storey house, but with rooms in the roof. So you've got dormer windows or roof lights. Also, in terms of density, which I think you can see from this plan, is very similar to the surrounding context, and it's also very similar to phase 1, all less than 40 dwellings per hectare, which is in accordance with the outline and the code. On to parking. So we're using a number of different parking strategies, which are all in accordance with Suffolk County Council guidance and the code. So 4 and 5 bedroom homes will have 3 spaces, 3 bedroom homes will have 2 spaces, and 1 and 2 bedroom homes will have either 1 or 2 spaces. We've also been developing the parking strategy in consultation with officers at Baber and Suffolk County Council. I think the really most important point to make here is that it's our intention to provide electric vehicle charging to all new homes. And one of the challenges with any parking strategy is to ensure that sufficient parking is provided, but it doesn't dominate the street scenes. And we've used a variety of techniques to do this. So on plot, in drives and in garages, tucked down the sides of houses, and also in parking courts to minimise car impact on the main streets, and particularly those green spaces that we've spoken about. Also, a challenge with the EV charging is to make sure that parking is conveniently positioned next to the plot that it's allocated to make sure that EV charging is deliverable. We've also, of course, allowed for visitor parking, and that's shown green on this plan, and we're achieving policy compliant number, which is 61 spaces across this phase. Sorry, just lost my piece of paper there. So there's a comprehensive network of pedestrian routes and cycleways planned for the whole development, and you can see that here, a diagram from the design code. So new cycle paths will link up with existing ones. So for example, on Orby Drive and Reynolds Way, they're shown dark green on this plan. Of course, the existing public right-of-way will be retained. There will also be new cycle and pedestrian links through phase 2, west to east, to encourage walking to school and the village centre. And this is actually in addition to the code requirement. Cycle parking will be provided to all new homes within sheds in the back gardens or within communal secure stores for the flats. And of course, we've got the new bus route, which will eventually run through the whole development. Slide. So on to ecology and diversity. And our strategy, of course, aligns with the overall vision, which is for a healthy environment to live and work in. Next slide, which is also on ecology. So surrounding phase 2, we've got this high quality landscaped open space, which wraps around the edges and includes a series of sustainable drainage basins to deal with surface water and areas of grassland and wildflowers. Existing trees and hedgerows will be retained to preserve biodiversity, and native, locally grown species will be specified where possible. Next. And running alongside the western hedgerow, we're proposing a linear play space with a series of trim trail stations, and a small green space is located in the heart of the phase to provide a focus for residents to meet and socialise. And all routes are connected to the later phases of development, encouraging exercise and leisure routes. On to sustainability now. So obviously Taylor Wimpey's aim is to create a sustainable community, but one that doesn't just benefit new residents, but also those that already live nearby. And we're really excited to report that all future phases of the development will be heated by a centralised air source heat hub, which reduces carbon emissions significantly and dependency on non-renewable energy. So there will be no gas boilers in this phase. And of course, as I've just said, electric vehicle charging will be provided to all new homes. Next slide. Because in addition to that, continuing with sustainability, all homes will be highly insulated, have low energy lighting and a selection of low water use fittings. Materials will be carefully selected to reduce life cycle impacts, including all timber from certified sustainable sources. There will be convenient bus stops and cycle storage to all homes, and there's a site waste management plan and an environment management plan in place to reduce waste and limit impacts during construction. So moving on now to what the new homes will look like and the character of the place. So in the design code, there are 6 character areas proposed across Chilton Woods, which will ensure there's a sufficient variety across the site. And phase 2 includes 4 of these character areas, which we've listed here. So Acton Lane, residential neighbourhoods, linear green linkages and the village green. Next slide. So if we start with the Acton Lane character, and this is actually an image from the approved phase 1, but phase 2 will have a very similar character, retaining, enhancing the semi-rural character of the lane. So the character of the place and the building types are inspired by Suffolk vernacular, but interpreted, of course, to reflect the 21st century. So they'll be highly insulated and full of light. The use of features such as detailed gables, chimneys, dormer windows, and a varied roofline will create an interesting townscape. And you can see the use of the corner turner house types here at the ends of the street elevation. We just go back one, just to ensure that there are no blank walls overlooking public areas.
Sorry, Ruth, I'm just struggling with my driving here because there's a bit of a lag when I'm clicking a button and anything actually happening.
Don't worry, Sam.
Okay.
But just to say that we do appreciate that Suffolk is a really beautiful and distinctive place, and we really want to respond to this in an appropriate and sensitive way. So the intention isn't to copy these details, but more to interpret them in a way that's fit for the 21st century. So just on to the next slide, which covers the Parkside character area. And again, this is another view from phase 1, but the phase 2 dwellings will be similar in character, with mainly detached homes overlooking the surrounding green spaces. And as we've spoken about, some of the frontages will be car-free or shared surface roads, giving that sort of leafy lane character. And I think the buildings within the Parkside character are particularly important because many of them do front onto those open spaces, so they're viewed from further away. And this really gives us the opportunity to incorporate features such as decorated gables, bays, dormer windows, and slightly taller buildings. The Parkside then blends into the residential neighbourhoods character, which contains a range of typologies and densities within a network of streets and courtyards. And finally, the village green character area on the next slide. And this is a really important part of the site because these are the homes that are looking onto the village green. as well as the bus route, the new school, and beyond that, the village centre and the market square. So we felt this was an appropriate area for a slightly more contemporary interpretation of traditional forms, slightly higher densities and taller forms. And all these principles were established at the outline stage and then firmed up in the design code. The illustrative elevation here shows the 3-storey apartment blocks, which act as like bookends, if you like, on that elevation, and really using traditional forms, so the pitched roofs, the parapet gables, and traditional Suffolk-inspired detailing. Difficult to see on this small image, I do appreciate that. But we're trying to use the good quality vernacular materials, which will be predominantly brick, splashes of render, so there'll be 3 different types of colours of render, the off-white, the Suffolk pink, and a sort of stone-coloured render, and also a variety of brick types as well to reflect the different character areas. Oh, and just to say as well, as we've got the apartments there, that all flats will have communal gardens for residents to enjoy. Next slide. So just a few slides now on the house types. All of them will comply with national space standards, and all the houses will comply with Part M42 of the building regulations. This is equivalent to the old Lifetime Homes standard. And as already mentioned, 3 of the flats will be designed for wheelchair users. So we've got an example here of a 2-bed cottage and a 2.5-storey 3-bedroom house. You can see the emphasis is very much on open plan living with large windows and patio doors opening out onto the garden. And also all houses have generous storage and a downstairs toilet. So the cloakroom actually doubles up as a utility, and that also contains the kit that's required for the air source heating, the heat interface unit. And the next slide just shows some examples of, I believe, the 4-bedroom house types. Yeah, there we go. And again, lots of emphasis on open plan living, and also studies and areas for home working, which has obviously become so popular recently. And finally, a 5-bedroom house type, which happens to be one with the rooms in the roof. So that's classed as 2.5-storey. Again, perfect for sort of open plan family living, with spaces overlooking the garden and opening out onto the garden. And again, utility rooms to incorporate the kit required for the air source heating. And also this one has a home working area as well. So that really summarises our proposals for phase 2. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand you back to Sam for next steps and taking any questions at the end.
Thank you for that, Ruth. So just really to wrap up really from the presentation side of this, the next step for Taylor Wimpey is we've got the public consultation at the moment, which this webinar forms part of that, and that is running till the 14th of February, so just under 2 weeks away. A nice romantic end to the consultation as well. So, and we have after that we will obviously have time to review the comments. We'll be refining our proposals and looking to, where we can incorporate some of the feedback as well from the consultation, and we will look to actually pull together our planning application for late March. The reserve matters application, and then subject to that actually getting a planning permission, it would look like we'd start on that phase early 2023. So I think the intention is at the moment for this site, we've got quite an ambitious build program that would probably start this phase before we finish the second the first phase as well. So we'd be building out 2 phases at the same time. So say we've got a way to get your feedback to us. We do genuinely listen to the feedback, and where we can't incorporate comments, we at least respond and give our reasoning as to why that is. We'd welcome your thoughts and we'll accommodate that, try and do our best to accommodate that before we submit the application. And the way you can actually get your feedback to us is fairly fluid. There's a consultation website, which I think a lot of people would have been referred to this call on, and also will be contacted by email as well if you want to do it that way. And if your preference is to write to us as well, you can do that as well. But we effectively at Taylor Wimpey, we never feel like we're ever finished with consultation. We're always on the end of the phone line or an email. So if people do have comments, we're always happy to have a discussion and resolve that way as well. So yes, that brings us on to the questions and answer session. So I'll hand over to Alex. I've seen there's been some activity in the message area. Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. We've had a few questions through via the chat, so I'll deal with those first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And the one person's asked they can ask a few technical questions afterwards, so we'll perhaps come to that once we've gone through the ones from the chat. So I'll start with Jeff's questions. I think all along a similar theme, really, but can you say more about the construction stage? Bloor caused lots of damage to roads and verges during the construction in Acton. Will he be using Acton Lane from the Acton Crown and through Acton Village for construction vehicle access? And just a follow-up point, this is likely to increase traffic along Acton Lane. Will this be upgraded or at least repaired to cater for this?
Yeah, I actually we do actually have a construction and estates management plan, and that was submitted to Baber District Council last year and approved, I think, late summer. And so that actually details the logistics phase. Actually, I could probably can you is that sharing, or is that still on the Q&A bit?
It's still on the Q&A for me.
Okay.
So.
Bear with me because I just switched to the construction. Okay, can you see that now as well?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you might just need to zoom in slightly, Sam.
Okay. This details with our construction access. So the intention will be to use Acton Lane, but because the flow of traffic will be coming in from Sudbury itself, and you can see here where this area where I'm hovering is where we're looking to set up our construction compound, but it is a fluid. It sort of moves along because it's such a big scheme and with a big build program. So there will be a second phase, second compound as well for infrastructure delivery. But as we go through the scheme, and I'll just quickly run through this, the compound does move. So we close off that compound once we've got the actual spine road in, and we'll move to the larger infrastructure compound. I think that is for the bulk of the actual program, the delivery program. Sort of, so I appreciate there's a little bit of delay. So it does move around through the delivery program. So the person asking the question, this document is available on the website as well. So well, the council website, so you can actually download and do that.
And yeah, just to follow up, can we confirm that there's no need for construction traffic to go north of the site into Acton?
No, it doesn't do at all. So it basically effectively loops round, so it never goes past that point on Acton Lane. And I think there was a question as well on about the Bloor and damage they've done to roads. So the estates management plan deals with our approach, and if vehicles related to our site and the works that we're doing, if there is damage caused, then it will be our responsibility to repair those and restore those.
Great, thanks for that, Sam. Hopefully that's answered your questions then, Jeff, but if you've got any more, obviously pop them in the chat. We've had a few from Rupert as well relating to ecology and biodiversity. So this perhaps for Greg to jump in if he feels he needs to. I'll go through them in order though. So number one, what ecological design standards and guidelines will be followed in the detailed ecological design?
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, there's a comprehensive landscape and ecology management plan that's been produced for the site, that's been submitted to the council for approval. That's obviously underpinned by detailed ecological work that dates all the way back to the outline that our firm has been involved in updating, looking at all the species requirements in terms of grey-crested newt, dormice, as well as other priority habitats, the species that are mentioned in the second question. And that then is then informing the construction environmental management plan in terms of the overlap and ensuring that ecological mitigation is carried forward throughout the construction phase of the project.
Yeah, and you mentioned the second question, which is how will ecological design consider local priority species and habitats such as red list farmland birds, skylark and corn bunting?
Absolutely. So again, you know, it's all summarised within the landscape and ecology management plan. For example, you've got things like, you know, all the habitat creation we're doing, all the planting of the new woodland, the restoration and increasement of the new hedgerow planting in terms of new habitat species. But also you've got things like the skylark mitigation that we've got built into the programme. There's a series of new skylark plots that are going to be installed on the local farmland out in the county wildlife site. So all of that has been considered, you know, right the way back to the outline and relates to the whole. The site as a whole, and is summarised within the approach within the landscape and ecology management plan.
And these documents, the construction management plan as well that Sam referenced, if people do want to see these, I'm sure we can email them over if you'd like to, your contact details in the chat, or get in touch directly. I'll move on to the third question. What provision is being made for long-term management of green spaces and habitats? This can have a huge impact on how good these are for wildlife and people.
Absolutely, that's absolutely fine. So at the moment, obviously, we're looking at it. There are provisions within the legal agreement to allow for the setting up of a site-wide management company, both the woodland management company and the green spaces open space management company. There are also options that we're discussing and with the local authority in terms of the local authority at taking on those spaces. So there's a flexibility for it either to be a site-wide management company, which is probably more likely the approach that we will take, which will be something that you know, all residents will be party to and funded by the residents. But as I say, that's not been 100% firm through at the moment. And that's something that Telempt are investigating at the moment. But the two options exist, either for the local authority to manage the spaces or for a site-wide management company. But that would be a holistic management company looking at all areas. It wouldn't be fragmented and broken down into smaller parts. It's essential that we have that comprehensive management of all the open spaces because it's the real valuable asset for the site.
Great, thanks, Greg. Fourth question, how and when will any ecological mitigation and enhancement be delivered in relation to other phases of development?
So like I say, you know, the landscape ecology management plan sets out all of the mitigation measures that we need to do, and it's really done on a phase basis. Some will be coming forward at, you know, early doors. We've already done some really good advanced planting already, which helps support new habitat creation on the very western extent of the site. As we've discussed, I think in previous consultations, we have a just district level licensing for grey-crested newt, so we're already involved in the mitigation measures required for those, and there's an ongoing programme of mitigation for all protected species and ecological constraints that are built into that landscape and ecology management plan, and again in the construction environmental management plan. So it's really a rolling programme as we bring forward open space areas, and anything that's required up front, as I say, we're starting to do some of that early mitigation now.
Great, thank you. Question 5, the master plan indicates sports pitches on land that is designed as a county wildlife site. Is this still the proposed use for that area?
Well, it's on the land adjacent to the county wildlife site as designated through the land use parameter plan that was secured through the outline application. So we are following the land use parameter plan secured through the outline application.
Okay. And finally, question 6, will Telempt be developing a biodiversity net gain plan for the site? There's clear potential for significant net gain given the proportion of green space.
So Telempt won't be developing a specific net gain for the site. Obviously, we understand that there's a real benefit here in terms of increasing and making the most of the biodiversity on the site, and everything that we are doing through the landscape ecology management plan, everything that we're trying to do through the landscape proposal of the site is really trying to increase the biodiversity value of everything across the site wherever we can. So whilst there's not a defined biodiversity net gain that we're chasing on this one, we are looking to maximise all opportunities to increase biodiversity net gain across the site.
Great, thanks, Greg. Rupert's just followed up to note that the boundary of the County Wildlife Site changed in 2006. I don't know if that's something that we've incorporated or if that's correct.
Again, it's something that we can check and we can provide Rupert with the documentation. But as I say, the land that's secured is secured through the outline planning application. We're following the parameters that are set by the land use parameter plan that have the sports pitches out there on the eastern side of the development adjacent to the County Wildlife Site that's retained.
Thanks, Greg. Rupert, I see you're typing, so I'll wait for any more questions to come through. Okay, so yeah, it's given to understand this from Suffolk Wildlife Trust would be good to pick up outside the meeting. So again, Rupert, if you want to get in touch using the email address, you perhaps already have my email address as well. Then we can definitely pick that up with you.
Can I just chime in as well, actually, because I think there's some things that we're exploring that are going to help on biodiversity and ecology and things that we're looking to be doing over and above our planning consent as well. One of them is we're looking at the potential for a community orchard within the site, and I think that'll be provision of circa 200 extra trees, and we're currently reviewing where we're going to be siting those, whether it will be in one central orchard or perhaps located across the orchard, and this one will be news for Greg. I've been talking with a company as well who'll be looking to install beehives as well throughout the site. So I think that's something that we'll also be we're seriously pursuing as well. So there'll be a lot of different things that we'll be doing as well, sort of over and above, I suppose, our requirements.
Absolutely right, Sam. And I think it's important to stress. As I say, I appreciate. I know the detail of the landscape ecology management plan, but it sets out that Taylor Wimpey has its own environmental strategy that includes for the inclusion of bird and bat boxes within the fabric of buildings, inclusion of hedgehog highways within all of the developments, and wildlife hotels, and in the case of this, bug hotels, things like beehives. So that's there underpinning it, but there's also that strengthened through the landscape ecology and management plan, that sets out the requirements for each of the phases in terms of the number of boxes and wildlife niches that we'll be incorporating.
Great, thanks very much for that, both. I'll let Rupert finish typing. Yeah, I'm sure we can share the length. That's not a problem at all.
It's all these are on Baber's website, aren't they? But we can provide links. You can probably provide a link to that on the website, could you, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be quite easy to upload.
Yeah, I think some of those documents, it makes sense just to have quick links to them, sort of LEMP and the SEMP.
Brilliant. That's all the questions we've had in the chat so far. I'll just scroll up. Sorry, this person's name hasn't showed, but they have a number of technical questions which they say it would be easier to ask rather than write. Sam, are you able to unmute people individually so that they can be asked?
Yeah, I mean, I probably should. Yeah, I suppose I just would probably apologise to Mr. Macefield and Mr. Bartrop there. I think if they've sort of worn out their fingers typing in all their questions, but yeah, happy to facilitate this. Bear with me. So
it's coming up as consultant Acton.
Okay. If I allow the microphone then mystery consultant Acton should be able to unmute themselves and speak now. Hello, are you there? You might have to. You'll have to unmute yourself manually. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we can hear you.
You can now hear me. Fine. I'm not that shy. My name's John Purser. Just as a preamble, I'm really pleased to hear about the community orchard, because 5 years ago, an orchard adjoining the site was grubbed up to build 100 houses. But going back to my questions, where will employment within cycling distance for residents be located?
If I scroll, let me try and scroll back for you to a master plan. There is perhaps there are. Can you see that on my screen?
Yes.
So there, Ruth's gone through, I think, and talked through the cycle links, and it's all available, and well, it's a number of applications. But yes, there's employment obviously within Sudbury, and there's employment as part of this site. Admittedly, it's not something that Taylor Wimpey are under control, but there's two employment areas. There's an eastern and a western one, but the bulk of it, if you can see it, is this employment area here.
Yeah, but is there any guarantee that it will actually be taken up? Because initially the site was marketed for housing and employment, the two being joined at the hip, but suddenly the houses became freely available.
Yeah, I don't, you know, it's more sensitive than ever, isn't it? I think how our economy works and the sort of shifts we've seen over the last 2 years. But I think that's probably a difficult question to ask. If you can guarantee employment land, you can build it, but will people occupy it? Is the question, isn't it? So I can't speak, but I know that there is a promoter for that site, and there is someone who's under control of that site. I don't know when they're looking on bringing that forward.
Ah, well, that's good news.
Sorry, Sam, if I'll just jump in there as well. I think the one point which we'd probably flag is that the outline permission was drafted in a manner where there was sort of an uncertainty in the timescales where the employment land would come forward. So it was always envisaged that the residential land could come forward earlier in the day, and there's sort of the provision that the employment land would then follow once it could potentially follow once the community starts to develop, or ideally both would come forward at similar timescales. But it's apparent that the former is actually happening and the residential is coming forward first, and then, like Sam says, down the line the employment land could come forward in the next 5-10 years.
What I'd add to that, Robert, as well, and Ruth did touch on it in her presentation, is that the second phase of residential development that we'll be delivering, and all future phases of this will be under Taylor Wimpey's new house types, which have been designed and brought up to sort of modern living as well. So she touched on how a number of the spaces are flexible, and a number of the houses will include specific areas that can be used as a study / playroom. You know, not extra bedrooms, but spaces to actually work, and this recognises the growth in home working, I think, over the past few years.
All very well, but of course the scaffold is bricklayers, roofers, plumbers and electricians who will be building the site can't work from home. But I think I'm going down a route which is becoming more and more difficult for you to give an answer, so I'll go to the technical questions. What were the objections on scientific grounds to not using ground source heat for the district heating plan?
Yeah, from a scientific perspective, I think it was how we've explored it, and we haven't really touched on this, but there's going to be a community heat hub for this site, and it's basically going to be a centralised air source heat pump facility that will heat the development. And this is sort of cutting edge technology. It's going to be the first of its type in the country. And so it's a really exciting thing that's going to be happening on this site. And I think the preference between, whilst we explored ground source heat pump over air source heat pump, there's a few elements, and John, you are getting into territory where I am a bit shaky on, but it's about how far we'd have to drill down and how far we'd have to go with the ground source heat pumps, and as well the locations for those ground source heat pumps. I think it was about 5 or 6 different drills to facilitate that. Whereas with the air source heat pump, you obviously don't have to do that. You don't have to go down, and it can just be provided as one single facility.
Yes, I can help you here. You've got large areas dedicated to playing fields, and generally the idea is to bury the ground source coils under such areas like that. But clearly this is thinking that hasn't gone far enough for the future.
Yeah, there's a few elements, and I appreciate we haven't done a sort of separate consultation on this, and it's obviously, you know, this is all fairly new technology, and Taylor Wimpey are trying to do this probably ahead of time. And you know, I think you'd probably be aware that gas boilers are being phased out. We want to be well in advance of that. I think 2 of the other elements were obviously there's a cost element, and there's the cost seems to be prohibitive with the ground source heat pumps, because that's a cost that ultimately you have to pass on to the residents and the people that would buy in the house. And also there was an element about future-proofing the facility, and I believe that the anticipation is that you can start with the community air source heat pump, and it's actually going to be a flexible facility that, should it look to become a hydrogen-powered heat source, that could actually easily be converted within 15 years. So it's something that can be done fairly straightforward in that time, should that become a viable heat source.
Yes, that's the other point, that the houses have got utility rooms where the air source heating kit is to be located. So is this just the centralized system, just providing a very small proportion, and in fact the individual houses won't have gas boilers, but they will have their own individual central air source heat pumps, which will get some heat piped in from the centralized plant?
There's, I can't recall what the box is called, but there is a box that will be stored in the utility room, and I think that just sort of regulates the pipes, etc., as it coming into the residential unit.
So it's not actually air source heat pumping kit. It is simply, in effect, metering the heat that the house is buying.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
The actual
plant unit. Yeah. It's not the air source itself.
No, because they're well known for clapping out like gas boilers do after about 15 years, and then need quite expensive replacement. But centralized heating systems are something I'm quite familiar with in my day job. Right.
I chime in just for information, because in terms of how these applications are coming forward, we our aspiration, and it's going to happen like this, is our planning application for the community heat hub, so the air source heat pump and the location and how that will actually be delivered, that will be the next planning application we actually submit on the site. So that will be in, and all that information will be available before a planning application is made for the second phase residential.
Good. Yeah. Was along the same lines, was consideration given to a combined heat and power scheme to include the charging power needed for the EVs?
Do you know, there was actually, way back, I think, with the outline application, that there was talk, a viability or feasibility study was conducted on combined heat and power system, I think in terms of time, Taylor Wimpey as a group actually do these and have used CHP units. Typically, we've installed them in London in some of our urban schemes and high-rise schemes. So we've done them sort of East London and the Stratford and the Olympic Park LLDC sites. What ultimately, I think the trend is to move away from CHP because ultimately it's a gas solution, and actually the GLA, I think about 2 years ago, moved away from setting them as their preference for energy. So it's considered that the air source heat pump is going to be a greener solution and with a lower carbon footprint for this site.
The idea being that electricity, a small amount of electricity is obviously needed to power the community heat hub, but eventually, hopefully, the grid will actually be zero carbon. That's certainly what we're all hoping we'll move towards. So eventually, this development might be zero carbon.
Yes, hope is a word used very frequently. What on the same topic of carbon, what will be the carbon impact of these of the closure of Acton Lane? Because Acton residents believe that Acton Lane will be closed for access to Sudbury.
So, I'm not sure why there's been a sort of carbon assessment of doing that.
Well, in effect, you're doubling car journeys, and if people are, say, going to Tesco's, which is not very far from your site, they will be taking perhaps 50% more energy and driving the long way around, and that's all measurable. People don't go to Tesco's and buy 25 kilos of shopping to walk back with it or bring it back on their bicycles. It would be lovely if they did.
Are you talking about the long-term plans for Acton Lane, which is that a short stretch of Acton Lane will be pedestrianised, so it will be for pedestrians and cyclists only next to the school?
But that's correct, because that's currently a public highway,
yeah,
meaning that it's used by all vehicles, including bicycles and pedestrians, who could, of course, use the cycle path and the pavement, whilst the cars continue to run up and down.
Correct. They will have to do a short diversion, if you like, around the school and back to near Reynolds Way.
Okay.
I think,
but that's not on the plan at the moment, so we don't really know whether it will be a short diversion or a long one.
Yeah, maybe go to the cons and ops, Sam, or yeah, the master plan. I don't mind.
If travelling to Tesco's, it's actually, I believe, a slightly shorter route now. Because you'll come down Acton Lane and then you'll turn onto our Spine Road, which will take you towards the Tesco store.
Ah, right. Okay, so you're looping around the Spine Road, but that comes out on Northern Road where?
It comes out onto Albury Drive.
No, it's on the other side of the road, the other side of the site, the eastern side.
And oh, I see. So yeah, we've got a loop, haven't we?
Yeah.
So you mean Northern Road by the A134, don't you, south of the site?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can still access that, yes.
From where?
So only a short section of Acton Lane is closed or being changed to foot cycleway. So if you're coming from the north or the south, you can still use Acton Lane. You just divert around through our development on the main roads.
On the Spine Road?
Correct.
Yeah. So where does that come out? On Northern Road?
The Northern Road is east-west, isn't it, down there? So
yes,
there's
yes,
no
at the same
changes
point
to the Northern Road A134. That junction is remaining with Acton Lane.
Yeah. So it rejoins Acton Lane after the school.
you know, there is no change in the current sort of operations of Acton Lane, apart from one small section of the road, which will be terminated to provide this traffic-free cyclist facility, and vehicular traffic heading northbound up Acton Lane will then go clockwise around the spine roads and then reconnect back onto Acton Lane. So there isn't any sort of change.
So clockwise would be going to the well, from where I'm looking at the plan, going to the left, to the west.
Yes.
And then
around the spine road.
Yeah. So that in effect is around the school, which will create a rat run for people going north back to Acton. I'm just thinking of all the ramifications about traffic movements, which were all talked about when from the first day that Chilton Woods was discussed, and how it was, of course, a much bigger plan then, and and of course Aubrey Drive is a residential road with a deliberately snaking construction to discourage speeding, but it's very much a residential road, so that again becomes a rat run, because that would take motorists from the top end of Acton Lane, the northern side nearest to Acton, down to what is known as the home base roundabout. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Well, just as long as the people in Aubrey Drive are happy with that,
there's probably a few things there, isn't it? Because ultimately we're working with the access points, essentially, and parameter plans that were all approved at the outline stage. So we're just working within and delivering the aspirations there. In terms of how people are travelling at the moment, and I appreciate we're sort of on the back of a pandemic, but I think it's probably reasonable to suggest that people will continue to, there'll be a large take up of home deliveries for shopping, etc. So food shops, weekly food shops, and online ordering seems to be the more common thing, and I say increased home working as well. So I think probably what you can foresee a scenario where the vehicular movements are going to be significantly reduced to what was anticipated, when the outline consent was granted for this site.
Yeah, I rather think that the use of the incredible, and I use that word correctly, we can hardly believe, because it's never happened in anybody's lifetime, restrictions caused by the COVID pandemic will result in everybody's life changing forever, because they won't. People will go back to going to the shops to make impulse purchases and not just have what they thought of when they were emailing their shopping list. I do assure you that there's an awful lot of thought that's gone into what comes next, and it isn't necessarily what is shared in the media. But we'll leave that, because there seems to be some surprise from Jeff Bartrop about the closure of Acton Lane. And of course, people coming down Acton Lane don't just go to Tesco's. There are more shops than Tesco's in Sudbury. In fact, there's 6 supermarkets. Another little technical point: car parking in courtyards is a specific security risk, according to Suffolk Police. That was their advice when the Tamage Road site in Acton was up for planning permission. And in fact, I think the design was altered so that there weren't any parking courts, because they'd been seen as a terrific risk in the lime tree estate, which was built in Acton 40 odd years ago. Just a comment, because the police said it, I didn't.
Yeah, I'd have to say, parking courts and our aspirations to provide EV charging to the spaces as well has probably been one of the most sort of part of the scheme that we've agonised over the most and spent the most time trying to resolve. Parking courts generally, they are very difficult spaces, and yeah, the police obviously raise concerns in terms of you know, how secure they are and if they've got that sort of passive surveillance. And so we do try and strike that balance. What the issue is we have, and I think particularly with this parcel, is that we didn't want the external frontages and looking onto the open space to be dominated by parking spaces. So where appropriate, we've tried to move those to the rear of properties, as Ruth talked through, really. And the use of parking courts as well, it becomes inevitable as well, because where you've got properties fronting onto the spine road as well, having parking directly onto that causes problems as well. So
it's definitely in limited amounts in small areas, and we have discussed this with officers at Baber and Suffolk County Council, and they are happy with the approach, provided good lighting is provided, which we can assure you there will be.
Yeah, and I think that's the trick, isn't it? It's I use the term necessary evil, but it almost becomes that, and it's about striking the balance to providing functional areas that help resolve problems elsewhere as well.
Yeah, but did you speak specifically to the police about this? You said you spoke to Baber District Council officers and Suffolk County Council.
We on every planning application that we submit as a business, the police will comment on it, and the police we have what they call a secure by design officer as well, and so they will look at the scheme and you know, it's about trying to design out crime. So everyone on our consultant team are well aware of what they asked for and what they'll be looking for as well. So we incorporate from our own experience, and then the police will also have the opportunity to comment when we eventually do submit the application.
Fine. Just one last question, because I'm taking up a lot of your time. Does construction traffic, which you said won't come down Acton Lane, does that include site staff? Because you're going to have an awful lot of people working on this site, and don't think all of them are going to be coming by bicycle.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the construction traffic and how that's phrased, I think it will be for the subcontractors, etc. So I think the people who are arriving in their own personal vehicles will be advised of the routes into the site. But I think when it becomes the personal vehicles, it becomes a little tougher to enforce. When it's you know, the actual heavy duty vehicles, then you're able to, if one of them isn't, you know, following our construction management plan, it's easy for it to report it because they've got a big logo on the side of their trucks, etc. I think personal vehicles, it's a little harder to enforce that.
It isn't really, because at the front and back on every vehicle they've got a registration plate.
Yeah, but I suppose you'd have to have someone monitoring the traffic throughout the start and the end of the day, I suppose, or throughout the day, I suppose, when people are coming to and from the site. So I think that it does become a bit of a yeah, it's probably it's a tougher one to enforce, I think.
Yes, without sounding like Perry Mason, which dates me terribly, no more questions. Thank you.
No, thank you for that.
Thanks very much for that, John. I hope that was useful. I've had a couple of questions from Jeff, and one that I missed actually, which was a follow-up question. Let me just find it. Sorry. Is there a plan to upgrade the junction of Acton Lane and Northern Road to handle the increased traffic, and maybe a roundabout to help traffic flow out of Acton Lane?
Do you want me to answer that one, Sam?
Please do jump in. I know there is a number of off-site contributions that we're making. Does some of that cover those, Mark?
Yes, there is, and that junction is included. So we are coordinating with Suffolk to upgrade their assets accordingly.
And we've talked in the past, haven't we, Mark, about Taylor Wimpey? I think would happily release some of that money early, should Suffolk County Council want to do those works ahead of time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I hope that answers your question there, Jeff. And I'm just scrolling down. Jeff, I think your other questions, I think have been covered by the discussion about travel up and down Acton Lane. But obviously, please pop another question in the chat if you do have anything more to ask on that. Sam, could you, in the meantime, just scroll to the slide with the email address in case people do want to get in touch with us if they want any of those plans, for example. Happy to send them out.
Were there more questions? Sorry, Alex. I think I see some more people typing.
I don't think so. I think that's answered Jeff's question. Obviously, Jeff and everyone else on the call, if you have any more questions, anything that you think of after the webinar, or during the consultation, or even after the official closure date, feel free to get in touch. We're always happy to answer questions, no matter how technical they get.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that, and we've obviously on the website and some of the mail outs, we've got all our contact information, and we always on the end of the phone and we've got a really good project team here, so even technical questions, and if you're not comfortable tonight typing in a question, or as John has, unmuting himself and asking personally, that it's fine. We're happy to have a one-on-one conversation as well, so we'd encourage that approach. But if that is the end, Alex, am I okay to conclude then?
Yeah, I've not seen any further questions.
Okay, well, I'll take this opportunity then to thank everyone for attending, and thanks for the considered questions. We're really excited about this project, and there's a lot of really good things that we're doing as part of that, and quite exciting things. So yeah, we just look forward to getting through the consultation and seeing what comments people have. But thank you for your time. This will be recorded, so if you do have people that didn't want to attend or couldn't attend, then they'll be able to access hopefully at some point tomorrow. So thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.